So second part of the week, we are going to be looking at more function notation stuff. Just this time we're going to be looking at more from graphs and tables. So review, linear. Most people, I think, pretty much got it, but just in case anybody still is having a hard time, reminder that slope, you just have to use any 2 points where it touches at the corner of a box. So I'm going to choose these two, and I'm going to look at rise over run. So how much did I go up? How much did I go over? In this case, I went up 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So my slope is 1 over 4. Then intercepts are where it touches each axis. So my y-intercept is where it touches the y. And remember, we write these as points, so that's the point 0, 1. Then my x-intercept is over here, and that is the point -4, 0. Awesome. It does ask for an equation, so reminder that equations are written y equals mx plus b. M is your slope, b is your y-intercept, so in this case, my equation is 1/4 x plus 1, because 1/4 was my slope. And my b, or my y-intercept, was 1. So, yay. Next, writing in slope-intercept form, make sure that you can solve for y. So I have to get y by itself, so I'm going to subtract x on both sides. And I'll end up with 2y. And then remember, those can't be combined because one has a variable and one doesn't. And then I want to divide everything by 2. If there's no number in front of x, it's like having a 1. So that becomes -1/2 x. And 2 divided by 2 is just 1. So that would be my equation in slope-intercept form, which is much easier to graph than standard form. But standard form, it's easier to pull intercept out. Somebody can do. Anyway. Okay, this is review from the beginning half of the week. If you are given something like this where it says f of -3, it means that they want you to actually plug in 3 for x. So in this case, be careful. There's more than one x. You have to put -3 in both of them. And again, please make sure that you put negatives in parentheses, especially when they're squared. I'm telling you, every year, so many people do that. But anyway, this will end. -3 squared gives me +9. -3 times -3 gives me +9. So f of -3 is going to equal 18. This one, I forgot to change the wording of it, so it's worded weird on the second one. But essentially, if you're given this, it's given you the output and it wants you to find the inputs. You actually have to solve. So I'm going to set my h of x, I'm going to set my function equal to 124. So I'm going to say 124 equals 2x squared minus 4. If you do it the other way, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter which side is which with the equations. But I'm going to solve it like the regular. I'm going to add 4 on both sides. So 128 equals 2x squared. Then to get rid of that 2, I have to divide on both sides. That's a weird looking 2. But it's a 2, just so you know. So 64 equals x squared, and if you'll remember, the opposite of squared is a square root, which looks kind of like a checkmark box thing, which is called a radical. And the square root of 64 is going to be ±8, because if I have 64 and I want to know what squared gives me 64, it could be 8 or it could be -8. Either of those is fine. So what that means is that h of 8 gives me 124 and h of -8 gives me 124. Cool. So the new stuff this week, we're going to be looking at graphs. And we're going to be using function notation on a graph. So you just have to remember which is inputs or outputs, which is X or Y. So for this first one, what it's saying, oh man, I forgot to change the letter. That's supposed to say F. That says F. It's an ugly F, whatever. Okay, so this is saying F of -4. That's saying if you input -4, what would your output be? So I have to go where X is -4. Anytime that it's giving you a number inside those parentheses, it's saying that it's the X and it wants to know what Y is. So when X is -4, Y is -5. -5. My negative did drop. There you go. Okay, and all these are going to be the same. So if for F of -2, I go where X is -2, and then I'm going to go down to my function and see that it at -2, Y is -3. So it's giving you the X and it's asking you what Y is. At F of 0, that's when X is 0, so that's when it's on the actual Y-axis. In this case, Y is -3 again. And then F of 4, when X is 4, if I come down, I hit my function at -7. So F of 4 equals -7. So anytime it says find F of whatever, they're giving you the X and they want to know why. Okay, now if it's this way, if it's saying for what value of X is, that's G there now. Look at me just making a mess of everything. Pretend like you say F. This is what I get for copying and pasting and not being careful. So for what value of X is F of X -2? So I have to go where Y is -2 and see what my X is. Okay, so it's just doing it backwards. The important thing with function notation is that you know if they're talking about X or if they're talking about Y. If it's inside the parentheses, it's X. If it's not, if it's just set equal to it, it's Y. So in this case, when F of X equals -2, X equals -1. Cool. For what value of X is F of X equal to -4? So in this case, I'm going to go where Y is -4. But if I look, there's 2 points where it's equal to -4. So in that case, I'm going to have 2 answers. So over here at -3, the function is -4, and over here also at +1. So if that ever happens, just know that you want to name all of the X's, not just like this random X has -4. There's 2 X's, so you have to tell me both of them, okay? And then last new thing for this week is looking at it in the context of a table. So tables are just very organized, like inputs, outputs. So this is just like the graph. It's saying, what is the value for F of -4? Well, you just go where X is -4. And I see that my output, my F of X, is -12. If X equals 1, find F of X. Now this is tricky because it's saying X equals 1. It's not saying F of X equals. So it didn't put it in the parentheses, but it's asking you the same thing as if it had. So when X equals 1, F of X, that's the same thing as saying F of 1 equals -1. Okay. If F of X equals -18, what is X? So I look in the Y column or the output column and I find -18. And in this case, X would be -7. And then this is one that's just straightforward. If you have what is the value of f of 4? That's where the 4 would be the x, so that equals 9. And then if x equals -6, what is the value of x? And in this case, x equals 0. Ta-da! So really the main thing with function notation, you just want to know if you're talking about x or you're talking about y. Okay, so please ask me questions. If you have any at the live meet, please make sure you're trying the live practice so that you can check yourself before you turn in the formative assessment at the end of the week, because that one gets graded for accuracy.